uh, mm. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Your Mission, a podcast where we dive deep into Scripture to see how God's Word shapes the way that we should live today. My name's Erin, and my co-host Liz and I are very excited that you're joining us today. Liz, before we jump into today's episode, how's life going? How you doing? Do you have any life updates for us?
I feel like the third trimester fatigue has set in. I feel like I am so tired every day. Like I feel like I can't function after work, but I think that's normal. I think that's just how things go. And I feel like it's been really busy and it's going to be busy for the next few weeks. But then after that, hopefully I can slow down because I feel like I haven't prepared at all but I'm 31 weeks pregnant right now. So I still have some time in my mind because I'm like, oh, baby could be here in 6 weeks or 10 or 11. It's probably closer to 10 or 11. So I feel like I still have time. But yeah, I'm definitely tired. I have like a month left of work and it's been getting pretty hard to like sit at work and just be there and do random things because normally I do inspections, but I've stopped in the past couple weeks doing those just because I'm uncomfortable and I can't even bend down. And
Put your boots
operators
on.
yeah, I can't. I know, putting the boots on and the operators are like, why are you out here? So I've stopped doing that. So I'm just like a little bit bored, but getting through the days, trying to get through the days. And then Matt's gone for like a week, so that'll be fun. But overall I'm feeling pretty good. Like I don't feel like a ton of aches and pains or like super uncomfortable or anything. So I'm thankful for that. I don't really have any. I had a hard first half, so I'm like, well, the second half has been a lot better of pregnancy. So I feel like I'm feeling a lot better. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's funny because I'm only 2 weeks ahead of you, but I feel like in the third trimester, like every week seems so much closer. Like 33 weeks sounds so much closer than 31, even though it's really not that different. And I only have 2 weeks left of work, which sounds a lot better than a month left of work. So I'm good. I have a long to-do list. I was telling Nolan, like, my to-do list is long, just preparing for birth and preparing for baby. But I intentionally wanted to get everything out in a list instead of like just trying to manage it in my brain. And so I'm glad it's out on a list because that's made it more manageable and I've been able to pick away at it gradually over time instead of just like being stressed about all the random things I have to do in my head. And a lot of it is like, if it didn't happen, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, physically definitely feeling pregnant. I switched to wearing tennis shoes at work because putting my boots on, it's just not it right now.
I'm almost there.
Yeah.
I requested like the chit, so I'm waiting. I need to like get some.
Yeah, I just sent it because my command doesn't care, so that was nice. But I also am like sitting on my exercise ball, which feels silly, but like I just can't sit all day. And I totally understand what you're feeling. Like my workload is dwindling, which is good and appropriate. However, like some days I just feel like I'm like sitting there. Like I have one project, but I just can't sit there and work on it all day, like staring at the computer. And I don't have much that like gets me out of my seat and walking around like I typically do. So it's tough. It's tough to just like try to make yourself useful, but also not take on too much, but then also feel, yeah, it's a tough spot to be. So I totally relate to that, but only a month left. And then hopefully you'll have a little bit of time at least to not work and prepare. And baby doesn't come super fast, but if they do, great. That'd be great too. For some reason, I'm convinced we're having our babies like in the same week because our due dates are so close, but we'll see how that goes.
I know, because you could be a little late. I feel like I'm going to go late though. So I'm like, I don't know. But I think it's a good mindset to have. That way you're not like at your due date and like, oh my gosh, why is this baby coming? I'm like, oh, he's probably coming late.
Yeah. And I keep having that mindset too. Like I'm expecting 41 just because that's how, Weston was late, expecting 41, 42. But also like based on like Braxton Hicks, I don't remember ever having or feeling. I probably did have them, but just didn't feel Braxton Hicks with Weston. But this time I'm like, get to the end of the long day and I'm like, man, I got to sit down or else like these things are getting intense. Like they're getting more intense. So it's kind of crazy. I'm like, maybe I should stop drinking raspberry leaf tea.
Maybe. I haven't had any yet.
I only drink 1 cup a day, but maybe that's even, well, and I'm just more active and I'm just like physically on my feet longer because of Weston. So I don't know. I'm not worried about it, but it's just funny. I'm like, I could go into labor early, not like preterm, but like I could go earlier than 42 weeks. It's that would kind of surprise me, but it could happen. I'm just hoping I get to make the most of my prenatal leave. So
Me too. Like, I want him to be late so I
yeah,
can make the most of I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine. I don't want him to
yeah,
come early at all. Plus, I need to prepare in those, like, that month. I need that to
yeah,
prepare. But
yeah.
it's fine if not. But I feel like second time moms go into labor earlier, so maybe you won't go as late.
Sometimes I've heard mostly. I don't know if it's they go into labor early. It's usually that their labor is quicker.
Mm.
Which I would greatly appreciate. But anyway, we'll see. I have no idea. But anyway, any other updates before we jump into today's episode?
No, that's pretty much.
I'm excited to see you tomorrow. You're coming up for a little baby sprinkle, so that'll be fun.
I'm excited.
Cool. After last week's episode, talking about how we as Christians and as a country need to go back to the basics, we were inspired to do a little mini series just talking about that concept right there. Just what are the basics? And so in this series, we'll explore the foundations of our faith, starting today with Genesis 1, and then in the following weeks, we'll go to the Gospel, the Great Commission, and the Ten Commandments, and unpack what they mean for women living faithfully in our modern world. So today we are jumping all the way to the very beginning in Genesis 1, the story of creation. So I kind of broke this up into segments, just kind of some basic concepts that Genesis 1 really hits on. And the first is God's order and design. Genesis 1 opens with a powerful declaration. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So right from the start, we see something incredible. God creates something out of nothing. And then with the simple words, "Let there be light," he brings order and a sort of structure. So God doesn't just create, which I think is cool. He organizes. I know. God doesn't just create, he organizes. He separates the light from the darkness, waters from land, and fills the earth with life. He makes plants, stars, birds, fish, and every living creature. And then I think it's cool too because you can see that there's a rhythm here. Every day has evening and morning, day after day. Everything is ordered, purposeful, and perfectly designed. So a few reflection questions that you can think about and that we could talk about here is, when you think about God creating the world with order and rhythm, how does that inspire the way that you structure your own life? Any thoughts on that, Liz?
Yeah, I think it's inspiring because if God values order and rhythm, then I should probably also value it in my everyday life, because I feel like I'm kind of chaotic, and that's something that I want to go forward and value more. And I know like having children also kind of makes you have to have more order and rhythm in your daily life. And then something else that we could ask is like, what areas of our life feel chaotic right now? Like, where are we lacking that order and that discipline and that rhythm? And how could inviting God in make a difference? And I feel like one area, we kind of talked about this last week, was like my own home. I feel like that is a place that we can really create order and create rhythm in our lives for us and our husband and our family. And I feel like right now, between like pregnancy and all the random things that I have to do, and then just like the normal pace of life in general right now, things can feel scattered. But I've noticed that when I do invite God's order into my home, like even in small ways, it can change the whole vibe of the house and like kind of create a peaceful environment that we talked about last week. And so practically, this could be like setting different rhythms in your home, like praying in the morning and reading your Bible in the morning, maybe having like a devotional time with your kids or your husband, and maybe creating different routines to keep things tidy. Like I should probably have more of a schedule than I do. And then just being intentional too about like the evenings that Matt and I have to spend together, because there's not as many of them anymore. In a few weeks, it won't just be us, but so just taking advantage of that and not just like being on our phones in the evening or doing work stuff, like actually spending time together, quality time together, I think is important. And I think all this reminds me that our home and our life can be like a reflection of God's character, like a place of rest and stability. So I'm trying to learn to surrender the chaos and then bring these rhythms into my daily lives in different ways. And I feel like you do a really good job of this, but
well, maybe it's good that it appears that way on the surface. I think some weeks are better than others, and I do have a lot of help. Like this week, my mother-in-law cooked dinner 3 out of 5 days, and my sister-in-law was here this week, and she cleaned our entire house. And so, how lucky am I? Last night, I just got home, I sat down at the table, ate dinner, and the house was clean. I'm like, wow, this is a gift. So I have a lot of help. That's the answer. I think I always hear that our God is not a God of chaos. He's a God of order. And it's just cool to me that literally the first paragraph of the Bible hits on that. For me, I also taking Genesis as an example. I don't think it's in Genesis 1, but when it talks about God resting on the seventh day, I feel like I could do a better job at an intentional Sabbath, because just seeing that I'm working and also, have responsibilities in the home, a lot of that has to be done on the weekend. And so it's hard to fit in a Sabbath, but if God does it and needs it, then why wouldn't we? So that's an area where I want to create order in my life and intentionality in following God's example in my life. Just because I think, especially for our kids, like if we don't prioritize that, then why would they? And that's like true with so many different things as we raise them. But I want to like really think deeply on what a Sabbath could look like, what's practical, and what is right. What does God say is right? So,
and even if you like don't have the time for like a full 24-hour Sabbath, you can start. I used to be better about it. I have not been lately, but I like started smaller with like, oh, I'm going to do like 4 to 6 hours of a Sabbath, and then just growing that. Like, and some weekends are different than others because, sometimes you just
of course
really can't take the Sabbath. But I remember when I was doing it, it was really helpful. But like you said, it's hard because it's like normally the weekend's all cleaning and like preparing everything for the week. So it gets difficult.
Which also is like restful and peaceful. Like I try to make those things restful and peaceful things. Like I don't know. Doing a little laundry isn't necessarily like a huge burden to me. Like I can find peace in sitting there and folding laundry. But like still, it'd be nice to just, it's hard to just rest, I think, for me. And that's why I honestly want to do it even more, because like resting to me is like sitting and watching a YouTube video, but that's not necessarily the same type of rest as like a Sabbath rest.
Yeah. So like staying off your phone and stuff, that's like something I feel like that really helps me. I don't know, but I try to do it. I don't do a full Sabbath, but between like church and then we volunteer for a youth group. So it's like 4 to 5 hours in between that time. So I'll like try to rest during that time, but I don't always have time to do that.
And then another area, just like being inspired by our conversation, I feel like my life feels most chaotic when I'm taking in like this world as well as my own world. I have my phone in case anyone's just listening to this. Like my phone world, there's a lot going on in my phone world, but it is real life in the sense of like the news and everything. But we're not meant as humans to like absorb every single problem in the entire world. And so that's a way that we can help structure and rhythm our life better. But that's just one thing that I thought of as my phone is sitting here. So
have you seen like the brick thing? I've heard people talking about those.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
Well, it's probably, just like everything, it's just another product that you have to buy. That whatever. I think it's a great idea. My app limits have been really great in kind of resembling what the brick would do. If I listen to them, like if I don't ask Nolan to like bypass them. And I also know that like I want it to come out of discipline. Like I think it's good to have physical boundaries, like limits in the brick and things like that. But also I'm like, no, I need heart change, because I want to be obedient and disciplined in doing it, not just doing it out of like have to.
Yeah, like I want to be able to say no myself instead of like having something that's making me say no.
But I think it's cool for people.
Yeah. If it wasn't expensive, I would maybe think about it. But I'm like, that's not something I need to spend money on right now.
Nolan seriously wants a dumb phone, and like I think that eventually that he will actually be successful in finding a dumb phone. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Love-hate relationship. Okay, so jumping into the next segment, humanity in God's image. So after God says, "Let there be light," and he creates structure, he says, sorry, I can't read today. Then comes humanity. He says, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." notice the plural here. I think it's cool that all three members of the Trinity are present at creation. And then in Genesis 1:27, it tells us that God created man in his own image, male and female, he created them. So humanity expresses God's image in relationship, which I think is super cool, both marriage and wider society. This isn't just biology, it's about identity, purpose, and responsibility. Being made in God's image means that we are called to reflect his character in how we live, love, and steward his creation. So a reflection question for this section could be, what does it mean to you personally to be made in God's image?
I feel like being made in God's image kind of gives me a little bit more of purpose in life. Like I'm not here by accident. Like he created me with a purpose, and also I carry like part of him with me, and also having the Holy Spirit, we also have that. And so this doesn't just change how like I see myself, it also changes how I see other people too, because when you realize this truth that everyone's made in God's image, like every single person is worthy of love and respect and care, and just like going forward with that in my mind when maybe I'm having a difficult time with somebody. But overall, yeah, I think it keeps me going, because I'm not just here for myself, and I don't just resemble myself. Like I'm resembling the creator. So I need to like go forth and shine a light to people, because maybe this is the only chance of God that they will get to see today, and stuff like that, I guess. Another question we could also ask is, how does understanding that both men and women reflect God's image affect the way you see your role in family, work, or community? I think it's a really cool concept that we're all created in God's image. And in my mind, and how I've understood it, is like men and women are equal, but we have different roles. We're complementary. And I think when I look back to like me and my husband's relationship, we complement one another, and we both have different aspects of God's character. Like we might be stronger in some areas than the other, because obviously we both reflect God's image, but in sort of different ways, because I feel like as women, we're stronger and nurturing, and like we talked about creating rhythms in our home, whereas my husband's more of like the protective side of God and the strength side of God. And so together, those qualities make us more complete than if we try to do it all alone, because it is hard to do everything alone and to carry the load alone. So I'm thankful that we have different aspects and different roles that we can kind of own in the home and outside the home. And I think it makes our marriage better, having the understanding that I don't have to do all the things he does. Like I hate taking out the trash in the morning. That can be Matt's thing, but I have to do it when he's gone. Like when Matt is gone and I have to do both roles, it is a lot. So I'm thankful that we both reflect God's character in slightly different ways. But
yeah, I like to think about, I just love how it talks about humanity expresses God's image in relationship. I always love hearing people's testimonies and stories, and asking people the question, what's your story? Because through hearing other Christians' stories, even other non-Christian stories, you're able to see parts of God's character that you might not like see necessarily in yourself or in the people that are around you. Like, since we are all members of one body, like we all do different things, and we can see different pieces of who God is through other people, even non-Christians. Like I was definitely humbled. I had an experience like on my cutter where I was just so humbled by a non-Christian. I learned so much about God's character through a non-Christian after reflecting, and I was like, wow, like I was not open to that before, like seeing. But if every human is made in God's image, then we reflect some of who God is, which anyway, it's kind of crazy to realize. And then I also think that, like kind of talking about the first question, it really makes me value the sanctity of human life, both in Christians, non-Christians, like I was saying, but then also this bleeds into the abortion debate. Like, why, if we're made in God's image from the start, then that means that life is incredibly important and of value. It also, tying into like another topic that's controversial, it ties into why we need to protect human life that's already here through laws and through enforcement of those laws and things like that. And so this simple concept in Genesis 1 again bleeds into so many different bigger topics in our society. So I think I would go back, read through this, ask what does it mean to you personally, and then how can this be applied through how our country should be structured. So we'll jump into segment 3. It's dominion and responsibility. So God goes on to give humanity authority. He says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over every living thing. The Hebrew word for subdue is kabash, which means to bring the earth under our care so that it yields service. We're supposed to do this responsibly, too. This isn't a license for exploitation or greed. God's expectation is that we use the earth wisely, caring for it as He does, developing knowledge, technology, and culture in ways that honor Him. Any misuse, so pollution, abuse, exploitation, comes after the fall, and Genesis 3, not from God's original design. So some questions for reflection here. What does subduing the earth look like in your daily life, your work, your home, your influence, and in the community? I had never looked into the word subdue necessarily. Like, I don't think that I had really even heard that word much other than in a biblical context. And so I thought it was cool that even though the earth, everything that God created was good, humans were told, go and bring it to its maximum potential. So I think that it was just a cool concept that I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, and the way I thought about subdue the earth when I was researching and looking into this was kind of stewardship, I guess. So caring for what He's entrusted to me. And so I feel like in our daily life, this can show up in practical ways, like your son, obviously, our soon to be babies, that is something that He's entrusted to us, as well as bringing order into our home, which we talked about last week and throughout this episode. And also at work, it's trying to use the gifts He's given me. I need to be better about that. And then in community and serving your community, serving your church, all that stuff, that is things He's entrusted to our care, our work and our communities, our families. So just stewarding those well and seeing it as kind of a responsibility that God has given us. How blessed are we to be given this from God to subdue or steward well.
And a second question could be, how do you balance authority and responsibility in ways that honor God rather than yourself? And I think all these questions tie together. And you were just talking about, it has to do with first reflection, taking a pause and seeing where you're at. If you are spending your time just for things that glorify you, or if you are being responsible with those things in your life that God has given you. So we'll jump into segment 4. It's God's goodness and human flourishing. So everything that God created was good. Nothing about creation was an accident or flawed from the start. Likewise, the roles of men and women, family life, and the broader society are all part of His plan. Raising faithful children, fostering strong relationships, and using our gifts wisely are all ways that we participate in God's ongoing work in the world. Genesis 1 also establishes objective truths. The world was created by God. There are moral realities grounded in His design, and humanity's identity and purpose are rooted in Him. Gender is not merely a social construct, it's part of the creation order. Deviation from God's design has consequences, but living in alignment with it brings life, flourishing, and joy. So like I mentioned, on a personal level, you can pull so much from Genesis 1, but also from a societal level of how we should live, and especially all the controversial topics that are discussed today. So many of them can be found if you just open the first page of the Bible. So some questions for reflection here. How does remembering that everything God created was good change the way that you view your life, your body, and your gifts?
I feel like it's so easy to focus on what feels imperfect or not enough, whether it's body image or your home or the things you have, or your, I don't know, anything. It all feels imperfect, but it's good to remember that God's original design was intentional or good. And especially during pregnancy, I feel like you're going through a lot of body changes. And so remembering this, I feel like has helped me a lot, not kind of spiral and focus on the things that are changing, but focusing on the idea that God's design is good and God's design for my body is good and my body's changing because it needs to for this baby. So I'm thankful because I feel like that is something that He's kind of protected me from throughout this pregnancy is not really like spiraling and having a ton of negative thoughts towards myself by just remembering how he's created us. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it can be kind of scary at first when you start gaining all the weight. You're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, and it's because it feels kind of out of your control in a sense. And I'm like, just the face puffiness.
I know.
Like, we're fighting as much as we can. But yeah, it feels kind of out of your control. There are things you can do, obviously, to make it better and healthy as possible. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, my focus for this whole pregnancy and birth has been surrender and preparing to surrender, especially like in the moment of birth, because the design is good. He created it. Obviously, the fall and sin plays a part in all this, and we'll talk about that more, I think, in future episodes, and especially next week when we talk about the gospel. But the fall and sin makes it so things aren't necessarily always perfect, and there is tragedy and hardship and things that don't go perfectly. But because of God, he uses everything for the good of those who love him. So if we are aiming to serve him and recognizing his design and living lives that glorify him, then he will work all things together for our good because we love him. So that's just an encouragement there. Another question that we could ask in this section is, in what ways can women today participate in God's creative and sustaining work in the world? And I think that, like you were talking about, childbearing is it's such a tangible way to participate in his work that he designed for us, like to fill the earth and subdue it. Like, I can't think of a better way to do that other than filling the earth with my physical children and raising them in a way that they're going to go and maximize the earth's potential. Like, it's just the most tangible way that I can think of to do that. Not that there can't be other ways. There are plenty of other ways, and obviously men do it in different ways. Like, they're participatory in the childbearing process, of course. But yeah, I just think it's just, I don't know, it's cool to pause and realize that that's like a easy, quote unquote, easy way to kind of follow what God's saying here. And then a last question that we could think about here, because raising children and mentoring others are part of God's design, is how do you see yourself influencing the next generation as his image bearer? And I really encourage our audience to stop and think about that question. I know motherhood is a way to do this, but even if you're not in the motherhood season yet, if you're a high schooler listening to this, if you're still in college, if you're older and not married yet, I would just encourage you to still take this section seriously and think about ways that you can influence the next generation, the ways that you can mentor other women. Obviously, we try to do that through this podcast, but I'm even trying to find ways that I can do that in my local community more. Liz, you mentioned like small group or youth group at church. Like, I think that this is part of our design as women specifically, but both men and women to mentor and encourage the younger generation, regardless of if you're a parent or not. And so we encourage you to just go and reflect on that and take it seriously.
No, I was going to say that too. Like, even if you don't have children right now, there are so many ways you can still pour into the next generation. And I feel like maybe finding someone who you could see yourself mentoring and like just going and asking them like, hey, did you want to like meet for coffee? You don't have to like make it formal and say like, oh, yeah, I want to mentor you. Just like go reach out and be like, oh, you want to get coffee? And if you're in college, I'm sure there's younger students or people there that you can do that with, or high school as well. So there's always someone. Just pray for eyes to see. And I think God will reveal to you the next steps.
Yeah. Yeah, so as we step into our week, let's remember these truths from Genesis 1, that God is a God of order and his design shapes how we live. Humanity, male and female, is created in God's image, called to reflect him in relationship and stewardship. Our responsibility is to care for creation and use our influence wisely, not selfishly. And everything God made was good, and living according to his design brings true flourishing. Those are like some good bullet points right there. So a few other reflection questions just that, well, we won't answer, but we'll give you to think about as we end this episode is, if you could live one principle from Genesis 1 more fully in your life this week, what would it be? So just kind of focus on one aspect and just think about how you can live that out more fully in your life. And then the second question is, how can we encourage each other to reflect God's image in practical, everyday ways. And then just to kind of end us, Genesis 1 is not optional or just symbolic. Some people think it's just like a lot of symbolism. It's not optional, not symbolic. It's foundational, actually. It sets the stage for understanding our identity, our purpose, and our authority as humans in today's society. So next week, we'll dive into the gospel, how the good news of Jesus Christ builds on this foundation and calls us into even greater faith and purpose. Liz, do you have anything to end us off today?
No.
Okay, you can take that out.
I know. I was like, I don't know.
No, that's fine.
No.
Just take it out. Thank you all for listening. We hope that you are able to reflect after this episode. And with that, this has been Erin and Liz helping you mind your mission.